Hi there, I'm John Michael Garapi and this is Popcorn Roulette. Each episode I invite a guest on the show, they suggest a movie, we get together, we watch the movie and we talk about it. Today I have with me David Welsh. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
What do you do?
I'm a writer, a podcaster, a filmmaker, a comic book retailer, and I'm a jack of all trades and master of some.
What have you mastered? What do you got going for you? I call you on the spot on this.
Yeah, I think I conjugated that verb improperly. I'm mastering some.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Okay.
I'm also a student.
Not grammar, evidently.
Yeah. Also a student.
Why don't you talk about Blumhouse Divided? You've got a podcast going right now, right?
Yeah, so I have a podcast with my wife, Ashley, where we talk about the films from Blumhouse Productions. And they make a lot of horror movies. You can call them kind of like a B-movie studio. They make Paranormal Activity, Insidious, and Ashley one day was like, I'm going to watch every one of their movies, because she started recognizing the logo.
Yeah.
And as a film student, as like a interest in like podcasts and things like that, I was just like, I need a project. We're doing a show. We've been doing it for a couple years. Just bought some new microphones finally, and we've got like 40 episodes.
Yeah.
So I haven't done it as consistently as I would like, but I've done way more than I thought we would.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great too. I mean, I see your posts all the time, so like I should be liking them more often. You would think I would like them more often.
Hey,
from now on, I'm going to have to like them.
If you're seeing them, it's working. So
we're walking. Tonight we're talking about Tron Legacy, starring Jeff Bridges, Garrett Hudland, and Olivia Wilde, directed by Joseph Kosinski. But before we get to the movie, we always have a snack on the show, and we're having Junior Mints. Why are we having Junior Mints, Dave?
For some reason, they're my favorite movie theater candy. I'll never eat them anywhere else. Ooh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was so excited for this part of the show. I'll never eat them anywhere else.
Just in the theater?
Yeah, just in the theater, and I think it's the only place I really ever see them. And I got them because I thought it would be funny because of Seinfeld, when they drop a Junior Mint into someone who has like their chest open during surgery. And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna get Junior Mints like on Seinfeld, and they're actually really good.
I'm always surprised whenever I eat these things. I'm like, oh, they're minty. Anyhow, why did you choose Tron Legacy?
Well, it would have been more in brand to choose a horror movie or something.
Right. That's cool. We're talking Tron Legacy today.
But we're talking Tron Legacy because we're having that hangout where we watch a ton of Mystery Science Theater, and we're talking about like movies that aren't great or aren't well regarded, but we love.
Yeah.
And like to me, like that's Tron Legacy. When this movie came out in 2010, which was 8 years ago, like I can't believe it was 8 years ago now.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I was all in.
Right.
And it's crazy because I had never seen Tron.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what Tron was other than a joke on The Simpsons.
Right.
When they were like, does anybody remember Tron? And everybody's like, no. No one. But just the look of Tron Legacy was really cool to me. And I also like really love Daft Punk. So I was like, okay, cool, 2-hour Daft Punk music video, I'm in.
Right. It seems to be one of the dividing lines amongst people on the internet is whether or not you had seen original Tron, then when you saw Tron Legacy, did you like Tron Legacy? And if you saw original Tron, you were like, this movie sucked. And if you didn't, you were often on the, like, this movie was a great movie side. I don't understand why that does that, too, because have you watched original Tron since then?
So I have seen original Tron now.
All right, well, what's your impression
I may have seen it, like, right before I saw Tron Legacy, but it was like, I have no... Like Tron became before I was even born.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, I had none of that nostalgia going into it.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, not all people had a lot of nostalgia who had seen it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But, I saw it and it was weird and interesting, and I appreciated it for its quirks and for what it innovated.
Certainly.
But it didn't like set my heart on fire. It's not now my favorite movie.
It didn't all of a sudden pull the nostalgia or anything.
Yes.
You have no nostalgia for Tron that you never saw.
Yeah,
so.
But all my eggs are in the Tron Legacy basket.
I've got like one more question when it comes to the history section. Like, do you remember the first arcade game you ever played?
Ooh, no, and only because they all blend together. I guess I'll say the first video game I remember playing is Super Mario Brothers for the NES. I remember having that when I was like 3 years old.
Right.
Like I don't have a memory of like not having a video game controller in my hands.
I mean, like, I've got the same problem because I remember the arcade as just being like someplace I ran into.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. I wasn't playing any arcade games. I was too young to. I just thought that like touching everything was good.
I think it's funny because I always had that controller in my hand. My dad was a gamer.
Yeah.
And so I just always had games around me. And I think it was like later as I was growing up that I would find arcades.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people were like, oh, video game systems are cool because you can play the arcade game at home.
Yeah.
But I was like, arcade games are cool because I can play console games on vacation.
Well, this is interesting you bring up your father because this movie is very much a movie about fathers and sons.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about fathers and sons who are computer nerds, too.
Yeah.
How much you were able to connect with that section of the movie?
Oh, like entirely?
Yeah,
Like 110%. Like on a very deep personal level, my daddy issues all rolled up into this movie. It's like very like intense for me. And the whole like reconnecting with a father that you haven't seen in decades, that got me.
It's going to hit you, yeah. Like just off theme alone, you don't need anything else besides that.
Yeah.
At this point, we've thoroughly confused anybody who's never seen the movie. So why don't we just make a synopsis of the movie?
Okay, it takes place decades after the original Tron. It opens up in 1989, which is a few years after Kevin Flynn, who is the main character played by Jeff Bridges. He has a son now, and he's telling bedtime stories to his son that are essentially his adventures in the grid, which is the computer world of Tron. This is the other thing. I always thought Tron was the place. Tron is actually the hero of the grid.
Right.
Tron is a character that Jeff Bridges met that is a security program designed by his coworker, Alan, who plays a role in this movie as well. And so he's telling all these adventures he's had with Tron in this computer world. And he's like, someday, son, you're going to get to come with me into the grid. And then he rides off on a motorcycle, and he never comes back. Now, Sam, his son, has grown up without a father, but he's inherited his father's company. His father became like a very Steve Jobs, like Bill Gates kind of figure after the original Tron. And so now Sam's saddled with this legacy that he's just not mature enough to handle. He's very rebellious. His real introduction is him doing a bunch of extreme sports, angsty teenager stuff, pulling pranks on the company as they're about to launch their new product. And he basically gives away the operating system for free. And so he's not ready for really the burden of running this company. Alan tries to get him back in and also tells him he got a page because he still carries a pager around in 2010.
Sleep with that pager.
And he tells Sam that he got a message from his dad from the arcade that his dad used to own. And they're like, well, that's impossible. He's been missing. Sam checks it out, goes into the arcade. It's an amazing sequence of this dusty arcade where he flips on the power, all the arcade machines light on, Journey, A World Apart starts playing, and he walks through this arcade. This is one of those things too where this movie's really beautiful, and even beyond the Daft Punk music, like the sound design and like the way they use music in this movie is incredible. And so he finds the Tron arcade machine because this movie establishes that Tron is now like part of the world of the movie. The video game arcade machine of Tron they made about the movie.
On top of like you can also see
movie.
There's another Tron game that came out called The Discs of Tron. There's actually a small shot of that too.
But he gets the quarter that his dad says that they would play co-op together. Right. And he says we're always on the same team. And he takes that coin, puts it in the machine, it pops out, but he finds that like it's like, you know, an old haunted house movie. Like the arcade machine pops out. And he finds a secret office that has a laser from the first Tron. Yeah. Sucks him into the computer.
Are we certain nobody else has found this Tron cabinet beforehand? Like, imagine like a cleaning crew coming along, opening up the door, and be like, "What's this?" They're like, "What's this computer do?" Press the button and end up inside the world of Tron, where they're playing the games.
Be kind of hilarious. But no, Sam ends up in the grid, the computer world, which is vastly different from the original Tron, and not just in production design. It actually is a different computer system. And he sets off an adventure to find his dad. And it's very Alice in Wonderland. And I think that's the other thing that I really like about this is I really love Alice in Wonderland movies.
When Sam first meets what he thinks is his father, he meets Clue. Clue looks like Jeff Bridges from the 1980s. Yeah. Because they're doing the whole entire face mapping with him. How did you feel about, the obvious word here is uncanny valley. Yeah. You know, like, did you feel that was pronounced or acceptable?
At the time, it is slightly off-putting in the flashback scene, but they use a lot of shadows and stuff, and they really hide it like all right. And it didn't bug me at the time. Watching it today, I was kind of like, oh yeah, that doesn't look that great anymore.
Right.
But it doesn't.
I don't even remember it. Like I remember I just recently watched this movie, and I watched this movie in 2010. When I first saw the movie, I don't even think I noticed like, oh yeah, that's Jeff Bridges, but younger.
Yeah.
I don't even think that even made a connection in my head.
Yeah, but now it doesn't hold up quite as well, but I think it's serviceable to the story. I think it was better than just doing prosthetics or something.
Yeah.
In the sense that this is like a video game movie.
That was the thing. A lot of people seem to have missed
Yeah.
that. It's just like, oh, but he's a computer simulation.
Yeah.
Why isn't that acceptable?
Yeah, so Clue, I don't flinch at that at all. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, he's not the real Jeff Bridges anyways.
Right.
Like, he is computer design. And of course, everybody else is real people, but it's fine. Like, I'm more like, as long as it works for the story, then I'm going to buy it. Like, I've seen worse effects.
Right.
And I'm not super picky on that anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how good are the games? Do you think that the games that they had worked?
I do want to say, like, if you mean by graphics, just like the visual effects and design of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other movie that looks like this movie.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenally beautiful looking movie with such focused production design. Like
Right.
every frame is two colors.
Right.
Like whether it's black and white or black and orange or black and blue, like
Without
everything's
sacrificing design aesthetics or anything like that. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it was made, oh, just here's two monochrome and like
Yeah.
that's it, you know?
And that's sort of how the original Tron was too, but the original Tron's more gray. So I really do love the visual design of this movie. Like I said, there's no other movie that looks like this.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing that drew me to it. And it is, to tie to what you said about the games, like it is, the games are like your first great introduction to what the design and capabilities, I guess, of the world is gonna be. And so yeah, it's really lovely, it's really kinetic, it's fast. The games that they play, basically when we say games, like he's brought into like this gladiator games that Clue, who was a program his father designed that's now like the fascist dictator of the grid, is just having prisoners of war compete in these games. And so that's how Sam gets involved. And so the games are the original from the other Tron. They're the Disc Wars, where they're basically throwing frisbees at each other, and if you get hit, you
They've added
blow
ninja
up.
moves to Disc Wars.
Yeah, and so now it's much more acrobatic. And then they also do the light cycle races, which I think even if you haven't seen the original Tron, you understand the light cycles.
Yeah.
It's basically Snake on motorcycles.
Yeah.
You have this beam of light behind your motorcycle. You're trying to get ahead of your opponent, cut them off. They crash into the beam of light. You win.
Yeah.
And it's just taken to, and I'll say for the original Tron, that scene like still holds up. Like that's such a cool looking scene.
Personally speaking, I think the Tron Legacy version of the light cycle version is much like more beautiful.
Yeah.
But it isn't as intense as the original Tron, because the original Tron version is claustrophobic, and they lose all of that when they open up the field and make everything stunning, you know?
Yeah, exactly. The original Tron was more claustrophobic. This is more open. But it is just, it's a really beautiful scene of just coordinating. There's this moment in the middle where Sam sees this other guy and he's like, we have to work together.
Yeah.
And they start taking out a bunch of the enemies. And it was such a cool moment. And it makes you really feel for that character when he gets finished off too. Because you're like, oh, they almost got out of this together.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is another reflection of the original Tron, was that when Kevin was in the games, like he was making friends with like these other computer programs.
Right.
So everybody in the grid is a computer program except for Sam and except for Kevin, the two Flynns. They're almost treated like gods or angels or something. There's another character named Castor who comes into play, and Sam gets sent to him thinking he's going to be an ally, and he turns on them. And it's because he used to believe in the users, but he feels with the way that Clue rose to power and how Flynn failed to save them and protect them, he doesn't have the allegiance to the users anymore. And I think that's something that was interesting. That's like really, in the games, the way that Clue's henchman says,
What location do we have here before us? Because your rumors are true, we do indeed have in our midst a user.
But then, like, the crowd boos so much. And it's interesting how it sets up.
It's interesting because
Not
the
quite a
original
religion,
Tron
but-
had like elements of religion in it, but it was
Yeah.
more like just this general Christianity, like being persecuted by Romans sort
Yeah.
of feel. And then they kind of dropped it at that, although they would reference it, but that'd be the extent.
Yeah.
Here it was like fallen gods sort of stuff going
Yeah.
on. Jeff Bridges has a Zen Buddhist thing going on.
Yeah.
Also, on a separate side note, the character of Quora, when Olivia looked at the script, she talked back to the director,
Yeah.
and she was like, this character, she feels like Joan of Arc.
Yeah,
Should we
yeah.
push more towards Joan? He's like, absolutely. So they pushed her towards Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
Like, do you think the religious elements worked in this movie?
I think so, because I think it is a lot about creation and life, and in the original Tron, all the programs look like the people that created them.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like I think the idea is that NCOM is like making an operating system. And so everybody, all the programmers are working on their own little programs, and like they're putting themselves into the programs. And so when Jeff Bridges gets sucked into the world, like he's like, oh hey, it's Alan. Oh, just kidding, it's Tron. Or
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's that guy. Oh, but like, so that's like a Wizard of Oz kind of feeling to
Yeah.
it. Of
But it's also
it's
like
these
a
people
Garden
you're
of Eden,
interested-
I'll make man in my image sort of
yeah,
feel.
but the difference with this grid is that it was mostly created by Jeff Bridges.
It was started by Jeff
Yeah,
Bridges.
he created the grid. He imported Tron to be
Yeah.
his security because he trusted that computer program. And then he created Clue, and as soon as he created him, gave him the task of creating the perfect system. And whenever you tell an artificial intelligence to create the perfect world, it's never going to end well. But Quora is what they call an ISO. Jeff Bridges, or Kevin Flynn, calls it, I forget what he called it.
Yeah. Isomorphic algorithms.
He didn't create these life forms. The ISOs just showed up. Like the grid is this like kind of city with like an infinite expanse of where it could grow, but out of that expanse comes something. And it's
Yeah.
like a tribe of people that are just lost, and they're like, we don't know where we came from. Flynn, help us.
Yeah.
And that's just like really fascinating that like he created this system and these life forms emerged. And you know, part of the conflict is that fascist dictator Clue is like, they don't belong here.
Right.
They weren't made, they're not part of the system, we have to get rid of them. And
Right.
a genocide had occurred in the
Yeah.
story, and that's sort of like the big crux of the backstory, and that's how Flynn got trapped in the world, was Clue taking it over, getting rid of the ISOs. And Cora is played by Olivia Wilde, is the last remaining of the ISOs.
I got to do a segment.
Oh, okay.
Which is the negative review of the day. This one specifically comes from Film Legacy by Cornroy, which was a comment made off of the original review. I just found it was
Okay.
more relevant, the actual review.
Interesting.
The original Tron was better at drawing you into the Troniverse, and you were more aligned with Jeff Bridges' Flynn. Not because he was cool, but because he was more human and aspirational than any other character in the film. Headstrong, humorous, and able to see a solution to anything thrown at him. My main problem with Sam and his undeveloped, unresolved relationship with his dad. He didn't seem to keep the traits that made the original Flynn so admired and likable. I can understand wanting him to be his own person, but he just seems as empty as the avatars in the Tron universe. Do you think they set up his character well enough?
Okay, so I don't think Sam is the best protagonist. He's a pretty standard protagonist. I think the story of him going through this adventure to find his dad, and he returns to reclaim his spot as like the head of NCOM, is a great character arc. But yeah, mostly he's just like a standard Luke Skywalker, vanilla guy protagonist.
They seem to have set up his abilities well.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, he's able to like paraglide and like ride a motorcycle and
they
escape
do that
the
with
police.
his extreme stunts. I like that he's good in the grid because of like actual athleticism and not because he's good at video games.
That seemed to be, that was Flynn's original thing. It's like, oh, I can
Yeah.
play video games, just means I can play High you know?
So I'm going to say he's not like the best character, but I do disagree with that review a lot because I do think his arc is great. I don't think his story with his dad is unresolved. I think it ends like pretty beautifully. And mostly the trio of Kevin Flynn, Sam Flynn, and Cora are like amazing to me. Like, there's some really beautiful moments between those characters throughout the movie. In a very loud, fast-paced movie, there's like extended periods of silence where they're just talking or like looking at each other. And I see like a lot of reviews that talk about like, oh, it sounded great, or the action was great, or it looked great, but like the characters and plot were awful. But to me, like, I'm so invested in these characters as a trio, and I think like a lot of great characters, like if you take them on their own, they're not going to be great. Like Han Solo by himself isn't great, you know. Luke by himself isn't great, but like Luke, Han, Leia,
it
Chewie,
was the combination,
like,
right?
You know, they work off of each other, and I think that happens in this movie. And I might be the only person that really believes that, according to the internet. But I'm very like emotionally attached to these three characters throughout their quest.
Yeah, I've got a couple of philosophy questions because we're
Yeah.
running lower on time. But Clue wants to achieve perfection. It's seen as evil here,
Yeah.
but isn't attempting to achieve perfection an ideal? Are we supposed to be attempting to achieve perfection in what we do?
I don't think so. I really, and like as a creator myself, like I think the more you try to achieve perfection, the more you're damaging what you're working on. Especially like you talk about like editing the show a lot. Like when I edit video and stuff too, like it feels like sculpture a lot of the times where you can just shave off the sculpture's nose, and you know you have to start all over.
Well, there's certainly
like,
a point where you just have to throw up your hands and say, like, I have to
Yeah.
work on the next project. I will never be finished this. Therefore, I must move on.
And
but like while you're working on it, should your goal be to make the best thing you can make?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can make isn't necessarily perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and that's I mean, I definitely see Clue as a fascist dictator who sees perfection as law and order, and I'm way too punk rock to like get on board with that. And on the other hand, this movie you have Cora, who is kind of imperfect by her definition, or at least how the movie like defines her definition, or defines her character or place in this world. But I really am fascinated with Cora because she's so fascinated with what the real world is like. Like the ending of this movie is wonderful. Cora throughout the movie is just, what is the real world like, Sam? Like, please tell me. Like she's very like manic pixie digital girl.
Right.
But at the same time, like, oh, she also has Trinity syndrome, you know, where she is cooler and like better at kicking butt than the guy. But at the same time, like, it's not the guy that ascends in this movie, like in The Matrix or like a lot of other movies that have Trinity syndrome, like the Lego movie or something.
Yeah.
But she's the one that ascends. Like she's almost like the Christ-like figure in like in this movie. And I think that was an interesting twist, or at least a saving grace of it. And the ending of this movie is my favorite movie ending of all time.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
maybe top 10.
How she becomes flesh and blood. I'm just going to skip to the chase here.
Yeah.
We don't have much time left to talk about it, unfortunately. How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I think her becoming flesh and blood makes as much sense as the Flynns becoming digital.
Yeah, true
And
enough.
they do bleed in that world, which again is like, does she de-res if she's in the real world? I don't know.
There's all these questions that exist in the
And-
process. How is she supposed to change humanity?
And
There's so much, like, she doesn't even understand what's going on with the world, so.
So this is why I love this ending.
Yeah.
Because the ending doesn't care about any of those questions. It cares about posing them.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about the answers. What it does is they ascend through the portal, and then it kind of cuts to the arcade. Sam puts the grid on a chip that he carries on his like necklace, which is kind of cool. He has a brief talk with Alan, says he's going to take over the country, makes Alan chairman of the board, and then he goes outside, and Cora's waiting next to his motorcycle.
Yeah.
And like it's still like, you know, it's starting to be dawn. They ride off into the sunrise. She gets to see her first sunrise. She like tucks her head into like the small of his back, like kind of nuzzles them while they like drive their motorcycle off, and there's just this beautiful sunrise over the city.
Yeah.
And it's actually the first time in the whole movie that you see the sun.
Yeah.
Every other movie,
That's
or
true.
every other scene in the movie, even during like the real world parts of it, are at night.
Right.
And so it just feels so like hopeful, or not even hopeful, just like anything could happen. Like, what does it mean that she's in this world?
Yeah.
But all you know is she's happy to be here.
It's like a good experience coming out of the movie theater, especially if you watch this movie and it was still technically daytime. You saw it on Sunday matinee, and like it's light, and then you walk right out into the light yourself.
Which I did. And so it was just really wonderful. Like,
Yeah.
And other people like might get caught up on the questions, but
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, that's the way to end it.
We got to wrap up, Dave. Why don't you plug your podcast one more time?
So yeah, check out my podcast at blumhousedivided.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at QuickerMcWild, and it was really great to be here.
Same here. Thanks for coming. Hey, take care. Bye-bye.